welcome back to the Gory Hole. This is Zach here. We are on episode 9 now. Saw some good movies so far this week and got some good movies coming up. But yeah, so today we're going to talk about Screamboat, the ridiculous new entry into the whole public domain horror film kind of trope that we're seeing, which I'm all for it. Fuck it, you know? Yeah, so this one now is Steamboat Willie. It's not technically Mickey Mouse, but it is, that first little cartoon with Mickey or Steamboat Willie. You can now make fun of him and not get sued by Disney. So, of course, you've got David Howard Thornton playing Steamboat Willie, and he is on a Staten Island ferry just straight up chopping people up. And it is a lot better than I thought it would be, but we'll dive into that in a sec. After that, we're going to talk about Hell of a Summer. That is the new film from Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke. Yeah, who Finn Wolfhard you know from Stranger Things. I've got a lot to say about this one, but we'll get to that later. We'll just get through the intro before I decide to keep on ranting, and then it just becomes the episode. We are then finally going to talk about Warfare, the new film from Alex Garland, and also co-written and directed by Ray Mendoza, who is an Iraqi war vet. This film follows a war mission kind of gone wrong, and it's just more so like a snapshot, a day in the life of, active warfare during the Iraqi war. It was very intense. So, yeah, let's get going. Let's talk about this gore, folks. Yeah, so first film we're going to be talking about is Screamboat. Definitely, probably just the most dumb fun one. There are definitely lots of good gory moments, but I was impressed what they were able to do with the very clearly low budget they had. I couldn't find the actual budget through my very brief research. It might be out there, but I just couldn't spot it. But yeah, they actually do pretty good with the very, clearly limited budget that they had. David Howard Thornton is in full Jim Carrey mode again, after he played the little Grinch spoof film as well. But he's borderline unrecognizable. The kind of prosthetic effects that they put on him are very, very well done and just very reminiscent of just like the Jim Carrey Grinch kind of design. So I thought it looked pretty good. As good as a movie about a killer tiny mouse can be. Any problem that you've ever had with the Chucky movies where you're like, how is this thing overpowering them? You're going to have that tenfold here. But again, just like shut the brain off and you'll enjoy yourself. Yeah, so just a brief little synopsis of the movie, right? So, directed by Stephen Lamort, Screamboat is a horror comedy reimagining of the 1928 Disney short, Steamboat Willie. The film follows a group of New Yorkers on a late-night ferry ride who are terrorized by a monstrous homicidal mouse named Steamboat Willie. This version of the character, now in the public domain, is portrayed as a corrupted and vengeful mouse due to mankind's neglect. So yeah, you've got Steamboat Willie. He is essentially been abandoned on this rundown ferry that is running between New York and, Staten Island. And he is upset about it. All right. So he's going to make it everyone's problem. So, first off, the film is just really funny. You feel like the last episode when we talked about like Amityville in space, and I talked about just like how low budget it was. Like when you hear the idea of this movie, that's the kind of quality of film I picture. And this was actually just like really well executed. It was really well filmed, so it didn't feel too super cheap, And yeah, the laughs were there. They were definitely trying to, make fun of Disney as much as they possibly could. And it was really funny how they kept like shoehorning the puns in there. For example, there was the scene where this this cop and this drunk chick were hooking up in some abandoned corner of the the basement or whatever of this massive ferry, and the girl gets on her knees to give the guy some head, and he just goes, "Oh yeah, babe, take me to the Magic Kingdom." You know what I mean? Like shit like that is just sprinkled throughout the movie to where you're just like, "Oh my god." References to like the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and shit like that. It was just it got me a little bit. The puns were might be considered dad jokes, but I don't know. I thought they were really really well done. Kills super gory. When the movie starts, you definitely are like, oh, is it all going to be like this? Because the camera kind of keeps panning away from Steamboat Willie, and you're like, do they just not have the budget to really do what they want to do? So this is going to be it. But then once you get a decent way in, you're like, oh no, they just were saving the budget for right here. There's definitely, you can, with most movies, be like, that probably cost them a lot of money. As it gets later in the film, a lot of the kills just kind of get ratcheted up and get increasingly more violent. So you're just like, oh, okay, they actually spaced this out quite well. Kill of the movie. I won't spoil all the kills, but definite kill of the movie is when said guy is getting head in that room, and old Steamboat Willie jumps up from above and slices the dude's dick off. And then the girl who's sucking it leans back, and it's the dick is in her mouth, and the guy is like screaming in pain and just like dancing around, and blood is squirting out everywhere. And then you've got just like Steamboat Willie just like ho ho, like, and that's another thing. Like the mimics of Mickey Mouse as he's killing people is just ridiculous. Like, God, it would probably make people, very, very older people at Disney, and honestly probably just anyone who has a stick up their ass that works at Disney, probably very upset, this movie. But yeah, the production value was really well done. I thought it was a really good satirical take on old Disney Corp. The storyline, I liked how they kind of infused like other characters. For instance, like the whole plot to why Willie is still there is because I guess he was on the ferry with Minnie Mouse back when he was still sailing with Walt. And they do this, the animated sequences are also really well done because it's done in like the same animation style as like the old school Steamboat Willie. So it's kind of funny. But you've got him on the ferry with Walt, and then Minnie falls overboard. So then it's kind of revealed that he's staying on the ferry and trying to like kill everyone and hijack it so he can drive the ferry out to the water and look for Minnie Mouse. And you're just like, oh, okay. He's just looking for old Minnie. Like, so I thought that was really funny kind of motivation for the character. There's a person that gets like an off-screen death pretty early on in the film that returns later to kind of be like working with this little demented mouse, and they have this like steel Mickey Mouse hat that they've contracted that they wear over their head, and then you got the ears and everything, and they just look like, those really annoying Disney adults. Before I cast too much stone there, little digress. Look, guys, it's not that I love Disney. It's that me and my brothers, we like to go to Disney and just get really drunk at Epcot. So, like, Disney's actually pretty fun for me. I wouldn't call myself, like, your average Disney adult. I'm not there, like, waiting in line being like, I gotta meet Buzz. But, look, I have fun at Disney, all right? So, have at me in the comments, I guess. Whatever. But, yeah, so I thought that was it. And some of the dialogue there with this character while they're wearing these like metal crude Mickey ears that they fashioned, you kind of just be like, this does remind me of crazy Disney adults that are like, I would fucking die for this mouse. And so, I don't know, felt like a nice little jab there at some of like the older people that still go to Disney. So I thought that was pretty fucking funny. I would say overall, this is one that I would actually watch again, which I was shocked to say that walking out. Like, I was like, I can't believe I enjoyed this as much as I did. And funny enough, I saw it back to back with Hell of a Summer. We'll get to that review in a minute, but uh, minor spoiler, I liked this one better than Hell of a Summer. I feel like I would sooner watch Screamboat before I watched Hell of a Summer again. And I'll be honest, I did not think I was going to say that. Like, it was, you know, you think you've been to the movies enough times, you can kind of like feel vibes and be like, I'm gonna like this one better than this one, and sometimes you're wrong. So yeah, I'd say I give Steamboat Willie, or Screamboat, sorry, don't want to get sued. Screamboat, I would say I give that maybe honestly like an 8 out of 10. There were a couple times where I felt like because of the limited budget that some of it was just a little too cheaply done, but overall like, and this movie serves its purpose for like so bad it's good horror. And I'm wearing my Toxic Avenger, arguably the king of so bad it's good horror, and I feel like Toxie would fucking love this movie, and I feel like Lloyd Kaufman of Trauma would likely love this movie. I also would like to see Trauma come back and maybe do their own public domain movie in the future. So I don't know who's coming up next. When is Superman coming up? Because honestly, a little Toxie v Superman action, because Superman's got to be pretty old, right? I don't know. Whenever Superman comes up, I think a Toxie v Superman, or maybe Toxie and Superman movie could be very fun. That's a great idea for anyone who wants to steal it. Just put me in the credits, okay? Thank you. I think that's all I got to say about this Killer Mouse movie, y'all. I guess one thing I'll mention is that everyone in this movie is aggressively New Yorker, and I mean, you walk out of the movie just being like, "Hey, gabagool," you know what I mean? So the accents are dialed up to 11 for sure. Like, and there's this one really cheesy line at the end where, the main character who's made it through it all, who at the beginning of the movie was going to like swear off New York and be like, I can't make it here. Like, she goes, this other woman who's been trying to convince her to stay just goes like, well, you gotta stay now. If almost being killed by a mutant rat on a Staten Island ferry doesn't make you a New Yorker, I don't know what does. And they all chuckle, and then I'm just like, Jesus Christ. New York. That's what I'm, the gist of what I'm saying is you get a lot of New York in this movie. Anyway, we're going to we're going to move on to Hell of a Summer now. But yeah, check out Screamboat. It's better than it has any right to be. Let's get Nick Cage for the next one. All right. Yeah. Here we are at Hell of a Summer. I believe this one came from Neon, which has just been knocking it out of the park lately. And then, I was excited to see what Finn Wolfhard had next in him after Stranger Things. I mean, I know he's been in other stuff like It, but like to see him attached as like director and writer of this, it was like, okay, let's see if we got a prodigy on our hands. And I don't want to say we don't. I'm not trying to be a hater, but I didn't love the movie, but I didn't hate it. It was kind of just like kind of right down the middle for me. I could take it or leave it. Let's, dive into just by starting with like a brief synopsis of the movie. Co-directed by Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke. Hell of a Summer is a comedy horror set at Camp Pineway. The story centers on 24-year-old counselor Jason Hochberg, who, along with fellow counselors, becomes the target of a devil-masked killer. The film blends slasher tropes with comedic elements, aiming for a modern twist on classic camp horror. It says modern twist on classic camp horror. To me, it just felt like, and again, no disrespect, it just felt like they really wanted to be like Quentin Tarantino in a lot of scenes, and they were trying to do all this like witty back and forth with characters. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any dialogue with these characters. It's just, I don't know, the camp slasher genre, like summer camp, you got a bunch of teenagers doing drugs, having sex, whatever, right? And while a killer's stalking them. I mean, that is a trope, that is a trend, a genre of film as iconic in American horror culture as Coke is Coca-Cola. I mean, or the other one, whatever, in broader American culture. So, I mean, it's kind of hard for a movie to not work for me on certain levels, just because when I see, the car rolls up, all the kid camp counselors kind of show up, and you're like, all right, here we've got our fresh meat, you know what I mean? Like, and you're like, who's gonna go first? Characters start saying shit, and you're like, can't wait for them to die. It's like a game, We've all seen, especially if you're into the slasher genre, like I am, like it's like fun games at this point when you go to see a new one. And this is a movie that just feels like it wastes a lot of time, when you first, bodies start to pile up, and everyone's like, oh shit, there's a killer on the loose. They hide out in this in a cabin together, and then there's this kind of weird little subplot that follows a girl who's like the creepy kind of goth girl that has a Ouija board, and she tries to communicate with the people who've been dead, whose bodies they've found, to like tell them who the killer is. But that doesn't really go anywhere, and I mean, you get some funny back and forth with it, but beyond that, they just hang out in this cabin for like way too long, and there's just a lot of like, again, comedy, which maybe from a comedic standpoint, this movie's better, but when you bill it as like a summer camp slasher, there's some things I want you to deliver on. You can subvert tropes and like take, surprise my expectations, whatever you want to call it. But when there gets to a point where this movie just feels like it's dragging, it's just like, get out of this cabin, like where's the killer? Like, there's a lot going on. And by a lot, I mean not enough. So eventually the Jason Hochberg character, he's kind of like the lead. And he is 24. He is noticeably older than a lot of these other kids that are there. And the running kind of, bit with him is that he had told everyone the year before that he wasn't coming back, and that, and so now everyone's kind of ripping on him for it. He is not super popular. There's a lot of kids he tries to connect with that don't even realize they've been going to camp with him for like 4+ years. So there's some awkward like comedy, a la The Office kind of style shit with him just trying to interact with people, which is, again, funny. But once we get to the point where like the killer's on the loose, it just does not deliver. A lot of the kills happen off screen, and again, it just feels like there's excessive focus on like witty banter, and that just like kind of detracts from the plot progression and the character development overall. The off-screen kills I've talked about before on off-screen kills and how there's a good way to do it. And this is a film that doesn't do it in a good way, in my opinion. In a way that just kind of feels like lazy. Like there's just a lot of like knife up, cut to black, or, camera turns away and then you just hear what's happening. You do admittedly get one very good kill with this kid on a stage trying to... I can't remember if he's trying to cause a distraction or whatever. All I know is you get to see an axe catch him right in the face. And it's so late into the movie, and I just remember when that kill happened, and again, it's a great kill. I just was like, there we fucking go. Where has this been the whole movie? Because at that point, there's been a handful of deaths, but they're just like not super memorable. Like, there's one death where like the killer appears to the kid, and then it almost just like cuts, and then like you find their head in a fridge. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't, like, it just, some of the kills just kind of felt lazy, and I was just like, and I really want to like it, because when there's a killer he's got the gloves, he's got his mask, he's got his tool of destruction, he's running through the camp chasing down kids, I can't help but feel like this is cinema. And unfortunately, it was a little more a tease than it did full on deliver for me. If you disagree, I would like to hear your opinion on why you think it's better and what I should maybe look for when I watch it again. Not that I use Rotten Tomatoes by any sort of metric, especially with horror films, but I feel like as of lately, critics have been nicer to this kind of genre. And this one's sitting at about like a 40-ish% right now with the critics. And honestly, I kind of feel like that's how it, felt for me, like 48 to 52% enjoyment level. There is some really good dialogue, and hell, maybe if they took a stab at just like a comedy, like a super bad style comedy, then they would knock it out of the park. Not telling them to not return to the horror genre. I would just like them to make it scarier and bloodier and show me more deaths. That's all I ask. It's the Gory Hole after all. Y'all know what I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, they tell you to make the movie that you want to watch, and I'm sure they're maybe probably fairly happy with it. And congratulations on the film. But yeah, if you're sitting there, you're writing your next one, and you're like, how do we please Zach in our second horror feature? Just show me some more guts, show me some more blood. Unless, of course, it's like a psychological horror. But if you're going to do another slasher, please, you gotta up the blood. Come on, folks. We are desensitized as an audience at this point, and you've got to do better. But yeah, I wouldn't say don't see it. I think any summer camp slasher movie, I get some sort of enjoyment out of that. So if that kind of genre just gives you this sort of comfort movie vibe, you're gonna get something out of it. But overall, I wouldn't say this is a must-watch summer camp slasher film. There are some reviews that, the good ones that they cherry-picked and threw up in the first trailer for it. That I remember one that said it, like, reinvents the slasher genre or, like, flips it on its head or something. And I would not even begin to say that. I don't think this is a reinvention of the horror, the slasher genre at all. But yeah, on that note, we'll maybe talk about this movie on a later podcast, but I don't think it gets enough love as a summer camp slasher. If you have not seen Final Girls, you've got to watch it. I don't know why I haven't done an episode on it yet. I'll probably do a summer camp slasher themed episode at some point, and we're definitely going to talk about Final Girls. But Final Girls is fantastic. You can find it streaming. I found it at Scarecrow, and I bought it because Scarecrow Video is awesome. Shout out Scarecrow Video. But Final Girls does not get talked about enough. But anyway, I digress. There were some missed opportunities here, but I'm hopeful that, their next venture I'm still going to check out. And I think, over time, this could be a duo that could make some solid films. Just wasn't a full-on knockout of the park. Maybe like a single base hit. We haven't quite gotten out of the stadium yet. But next up, we're going to be talking about Warfare. This one's going to kind of venture out of that horror territory, right? But it definitely, honestly, on some levels, it's the hardest one to watch out of any of the movies we're going to talk about. So yeah, we'll just hop right into it. Warfare. This is a film directed by Alex Garland. We know him from Civil War most recently. He did Men. He did Annihilation. I feel like after Civil War, it seems like, I don't know if this is just the headspace he's in, but he seems very focused on like military films right now. And this one is even a step closer in terms of like military realism than Civil War was. It's co-directed by Ray Mendoza, who is a character in this film, and Ray Mendoza is also co-written the script, and together they've kind of crafted this, like, as realistic of a depiction as you can get. And again, that's from my perspective, someone who's never seen combat. But from what I've read, this seems to be one of the more realistic depictions of war. But if you've taken shots before and you're like, that movie was far from realistic, come and let me know in the comments, because I could be totally wrong. But yeah, Warfare, directed by Ray Mendoza. Alex Garland, is a war drama based on a real 2006 Navy SEAL mission in Ramadi, Iraq. The film portrays a platoon's harrowing experience during a surveillance operation that turns deadly. It is a tribute to the soldiers involved, particularly Elliot Miller, who suffered severe injuries during the mission. Yeah, so I mean, we talk about realistic warfare. I mean, it's gritty, it's unflinching, it it's really hammers down the chaos and brutality of war, um, in a realistic way because the movie does start a little bit slow, but I again never seen combat. Can't stress this enough, but I feel like that's what a real mission would actually be like because they get into this house and then they are just kind of chilling. They're looking, you know, with their sniper scopes out at people. They're, calling in descriptions of them, going back and forth over comms with, other squadrons, but they're just kind of chilling in this house for, I think as far as timeline goes for hours, right? And so it's not, just constant barrage of gunfire and they're not running from building to building, fucking shit up with all these crazy explosions. But once their position is compromised and the militias kind of descend upon them, that's when the sound mix comes into play of this film, and it just is insane. From the first grenade to the last, gunfire as the tanks roll out at the end of the movie. The sound design in this movie is fantastic. There's sequences where characters are really near to like and close to explosions, and the way they use silence and weave it in with like the loudness of the gunfire and the artillery fire is just insane. This is a movie you want to see on like a big screen if like that sound is a big thing for you, like when Christopher Nolan came out with Dunkirk, right? Like that's a movie that you needed to see on a big screen with good speakers because the sound is almost like a character in the movie. And that is how I would describe this film as well. The background of Ray Mendoza being actually involved in the film just gives it a whole another layer of kind of realism to it. It felt like there was a lot of attention to detail on like how they packed their gear and how they interacted with one another, and like it just, I don't know, it felt different than like your Black Hawk Downs or I'm blanking, of course, your other war films. I just don't really feel like it was trying to be like Rambo Part 3 or anything. It's not your average action film. The graphic violence is insane at times, and again, this is a more grounded story with people that you kind of see as real people. So the violence is just really hard to watch. There's times where you feel like you shouldn't be watching it and that it's hard to watch. I've even points for me where I was like, oh my God, this is like, I feel like I need to look away. But there's a character who gets their legs severely blown up, and you just have to deal with it for the rest of the movie. And they're screaming in pain, and they've got people are tying tourniquets on them, but they're cutting off their clothes. And when you see just like the deepness of the wounds, I mean, there's a leg that gets blown off in an explosion, like kind of early into the film, and that leg is just kind of chilling in the street for the whole movie. And you get camera angles coming back to it, and just like another guy who gets completely blown up, and you get a view into his stomach and just like all the organs, and there was not only attention to detail on the how people act in combat and like the realistic slowness of the combat and like the gear and whatnot, but there was also very, very much attention to detail on depicting real raw violence. And I feel like this is the kind of shit that like Tom Savini saw when he was in the Vietnam War that inspired him to become what they call the Godfather of gore, so it's not a horror film, but it is at times a fucking horror film. There's a lot of discourse online about this that's very political, and I feel like you can't avoid politics when you talk about war films at this point. I've already said I think it's very well made, and that it's a very intense watch and a good watch. It's a very well made film, like I said. But people are taking a lot of different opinions and stuff away from this film. So obviously I'm going to give mine in this review, but I know Alex Garland, especially after Civil War, catches a lot of flack for what people call, like centrism, right? Where he just, he's not left or right, he's right down the middle. And people say, on both sides, they say that just feeds into the wrongdoings of the other side, and the back and forth, And I was reading an article with Alex Garland, and I believe he said something along the lines of that people say when you're a centrist, you're not taking a stance, and he says that he believes that centrism is a stance against extremism, and I kind of connect with that. I feel like there are extremists on either side that take things a little bit too far. That being said, in this current political climate, I feel like it's very clear who the side is that's doing the wrong right now, and that is, that's the red hats, right? I honestly, I wear this hat at work all the time, and people think it's a fucking MAGA hat, and I'm like, man, he can't take my hat too. But I get it. From an angle, you see the G, the A, right? And then it's just the red, and then you're just like, oh fuck, white guy with a beard, he's wearing a MAGA hat. And it's selling weed in Seattle, which is what I do. I work at a dispensary. It's kind of funny because a lot of people nowadays have been coming in to de-stress from the constant barrage of what that dumbass motherfucker is doing in office. And they come in and see a white bearded guy wearing a red hat, and some of them are just like, oh no. So there are a lot of times where I just have to let people know, I'm like, hey guys, it's not a MAGA hat. And then everyone's just like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, I digress on that. All I'm trying to get at is that this movie's catching flack for kind of glorifying war, but for me, it seemed to be one of the least glorifying American war films. I mean, it's still very clearly biased towards American troops because it is from the point of view of the troops. My personal opinion on the Iraq War is that it was kind of fucking useless and that it just caused a lot of deaths that didn't need to happen. This is a movie, while I think the focus of the deaths that didn't need to happen should admittedly be a little more on the Iraqi civilians, this is a movie that, at the very least, kind of goes, again, centrist down the middle, that there were a lot of people on both sides that lost their lives that didn't need to, and it was all to, serve the war machine, right? Particularly in the Iraq War, probably Dick Cheney, because he made a lot of money on that war. But yeah, so, I mean, call me what you want. Overall, I think America was in the wrong in the Iraq War, and people think that doesn't come through enough as far as the critics are concerned. They don't think that comes through enough in a movie like this. But from the structure of the film, I think it is a very subtle critique on our presence in the Iraq War, because the movie kind of starts, they have their mission, they don't really seem to know what it is, or at the very least, it's not very much portrayed to, like, the audience. So they're kind of just there, they're camped out, they're calling, descriptions back to people, their position becomes compromised, they blow a whole bunch of shit up, people are killed, people are wounded severely that's going to affect them for the rest of their life on both sides. And then they're medvaced out and the movie's over. I mean, the conflict lasts most of the movie, so obviously that's, a very, Cliff Notes version of the story. But the second they get out of there, there's a brief, 30, 45 seconds where the family that they had been holding hostage inside the house the whole time just kind of slowly goes out, looks around. No one's there in the house that they'd been occupying for the whole movie anymore. He gets his kids out, and the family walks into the street, and then you see the rest of the locals kind of come out, and they're all just standing and looking around at all the destruction and the body parts and the shells and all the signs of death that has just been left in the wake of this kind of pointless mission that these that these guys were on. and then the movie just ends. And I think that that is a pretty perfect description of what happened in the Iraq War. Uh, we were there looking for weapons that weren't there. We blew a whole bunch of shit up, left a lot of destruction in our wake, and dipped and created ISIS in the process. Ain't that fun? Um, and so, yeah, there's not a lot of critiques maybe that should be there, but I feel like this was a movie that was mainly trying to depict war in a realistic way to kind of show what American troops went through during that war and what they will go through in the inevitable, days that we go back to war. It feels like a movie for the families of these people, because I feel like it might be really hard for someone who has PTSD to watch a film like this, or even someone who doesn't have like excessive PTSD, but anyone who's been around these war conflicts where they've lost people. Like, I feel like this would be a movie damn near impossible for them to watch. But I feel like this is a movie for the families of people who've been in those conflicts to better understand what they went through. And yeah, it does kind of spend the most time with the American soldiers, but that's because it was made by American soldiers. And I know that makes the movie unwatchable for some people, but I come from a military family. I don't fault the military for the what they're used for. And especially with how the American system is set up, and a lot of these people are just trying to get free school. My brother, who's in the Navy, joined so he could support his family. And yeah, and then these people are just used as meat bags in a war machine. And I feel like that is not the kind of movie that these critics are wanted it to be, but that's also not the movie it was set out to be. So I think their critiques are valid, but at the same time, I feel like for what this movie was meant to be and the goals of the creators who set out to make it, I feel like it's pretty fantastic. And when you look at it from a technical standpoint, the sound mixing is phenomenal. The depictions of war, I feel like, are, for the most part, unparalleled. I feel like the closest you could get to it is maybe Dunkirk, and that was mainly because of the sound design. But, like, I don't know, this movie just feels very intense and very real consistently throughout. Stacked cast. I mean, you've got Cosmo Jarvis, Will Poulter, Joseph Quinn, Michael Gandolfini, R.I.P. James, and I mean the list goes on. Noah Centineo, Evan Holtzman. I mean, Kit Connor. The squadron of people is just like an array of young talent, and they do a good job of bringing these characters to life. But yeah, I would say overall, this is a film that's obviously not going to be for everyone, especially in this political climate. You might not want to watch an American war film right now. I totally understand that. But if you like the idea of seeing a war film that is arguably one of the most intense war films I've seen in a very long time, and quite possibly ever, I highly recommend it. I would also like to say, again, it's a very brief moment in the film, but on the subject of, also depicting, how the Iraqi locals were treated during this whole film. There is a beat in this film that, again, very quick, but they have Iraqi natives who are clearly working with the government, right? Working with the American soldiers. And there's a sequence in the movie where these medvac kind of like, shielded tank car things, whatever. Clearly, I don't know what they're called, but they aren't full-on tanks. They're smaller, and they're rolling in to kind of try to pick up a wounded soldier. And at this point, they're kind of surrounded, so they know once they go out there, they're going to be reaching gunfire. So the two kind of guides that they have with them, they get up to the door they're going to be running out of to like carry the guy to the little tank thing, and they have the two Iraqis in front leading it out, and they're just like, okay guys, you guys are going to go out first. And then the first guy who's at the door, he leans back and he says, in Arabic, he says to the guy, he's like, we can't go out there. we're gonna die. They're all out there. They're gonna start shooting at us. And then the guy like looks back and he looks back at the soldiers and he's like, okay, you want us to go? And the guy's like, yeah, go now. And then he kind of just looks back at the other dude. He's like, we gotta go. And then they go out, and then there's a guy behind who tries to kind of try and lead the charge, and then the guy in front of him turns around who just sent the Iraqi native guides out, and he goes, wait. And then they wait like 15, 20 seconds, and then they go out. And then it's almost like they were waiting to see if their guides were shot at. And I get that might be like their protocol, but as far as I'm concerned, those guys are risking it all to try and help them. A lot of them did that so they could get citizenship in the United States, and they just basically were using them as meat shields at that point, at least in that scene in the movie. And that was my takeaway from it. I could be misunderstanding military operations, but the way I see it, you send out the two people who are technically not U.S. Army, and you're just like, all right, wait a sec. And then there was no gunfire, and then you're like, okay, we're good. And I'm just like, that came off super fucked up to me. And so again, they do show some things that the American military did in there that, in my opinion, based on how the movie is portraying it, is the director saying this was bad. We probably should not have done that. So I think the movie critiques the Iraq War more than like any movie I've ever seen about the Iraq War. It obviously could do more, but I don't know. I think people are being a little too hard on it. But I don't know. Alex Garland catching all this heat for centrism. Again, I don't think... I think it's overshadowing that this movie is very well made. And I think maybe we should just, put that aside and try and judge the movie on its merit, its technical accomplishments, because it is very, very well made. Yeah, I would say... Overall, though, we saw some good movies. I would probably go like Steamboat, or again, I'm doing it again. I'm going to get sued. Screamboat, Warfare, and then Hell of a Summer. Got some good movies coming up. Kevin Smith is coming to town to do a little roadshow presentation of Dogma. That's not technically a horror film, but I fucking love Dogma, so I'm super excited to go see him and do the Q&A. That's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll ask him about Red State and Tusk, Who knows? But we got Sinners coming up. Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan playing two characters, and that movie's just getting fantastic reviews. So I've got tickets for that already. May is going to be stacked. The one I'm probably the most excited for is Final Destination, but we've got Clown in a Cornfield, which the trailer came out for that a couple months ago, and I had honestly never heard of it. Saw it was a book series, and then I was like, oh, there's 3 of them. I bought the 3, and I try to read, but honestly, it comes in waves. It had been a while since I had finished a book, and I knocked out all 3 of those books in like a week and a half. It was insane. They were very, very good. So I'm super pumped for the movie. It's directed, I forget his name, but the same guy who did Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So I fucking love that movie. And so I'm confident in the talent that's behind that. I'm recording this at 2 a.m. now on Thursday, April 17th. And right before I started recording it, I saw that the new trailer dropped for 28 Years Later. And I think that looks great. And that is also written by our boy Alex Garland, who did Warfare that we just talked about. And he wrote the first, I believe he wrote the first 2. And he's reuniting with Danny Boyle for the second time, who directed the first one. So to have that duo back, and the talent of Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ralph Fiennes, I think it's going to be great, and it looks really good. The zombies look as terrifying as ever, if you want to technically call them zombies. But yeah, that is not the Walking Dead universe. I think we've all talked about this before. Like, what kind of zombie apocalypse do we want to be in? And I think we all agree, not the one in 28 Years Later, 28 Days Later. That's if they're running at me, I'm putting the bullet in my head, y'all. I don't want to survive. I'm not trying to go out and try and find food during all that. I don't even do cardio at the gym. I'd be fucked. I don't follow Jesse Eisenberg's rules. Um, but the new set photos have been released of the new season of Dexter, and I'm very excited for that. So that should be coming out. At least the trailer and the release date for the first season should be coming out soon. Zach Kreger is gearing up to drop a trailer, it looks like, for his next film, Weapons. And if you don't know, he did Barbarian. And if you know that he did Barbarian, but also did not connect the dots that he is one of the guys in the Whitest Kid You Know sketch comedy group from back in the day, now you know. And so it's just crazy to, every time I, see his face attached to a film, all I can think of is like him. Zach Kreger is the guy who played Abe Lincoln in the bit about like what really happened at the Ford Theater, and he's just screaming, "You have fucked up now. You have fucked up." And every time I see that face, that's the only thing I can see. So yeah, it's crazy to see him come as far as he has, to start with that comedy group and then start direct, like his first fucking film, Barbarian. Holy shit. And actually, that's probably not like his first horror film. I think he directed the Miss March feature that they did. Shout out horstick.mpeg if you get that reference. But yeah, so there's a lot of good movies coming up. The Last of Us season 2 just started. We've got a lot. Oh, also Daredevil Born Again just ended, and I don't know if we got any little Daredevil fans, Daredevil heads, whatever you want to call yourselves. I don't know if we got any of y'all that are watching this right now, but holy shit, that finale was gory as hell. So it definitely, falls into the topics of this of this kind of overarching podcast, because you get to see Punisher return and just straight up fuck people up. He's got that hunter's knife. He is stabbing and slashing his way through, shooting people in the face, blowing their brains out. I didn't think Disney had it in them to put as much gore as they did in this season. But throughout the whole series, this whole season of the soft reboot, you're getting some great violence throughout. Gory violence throughout. And it is especially present in this in this episode, in this finale. If you have not watched it yet and you don't want to have it spoiled for you, you should pause it right now, because the scene where Kingpin takes the police commissioner and full on like Jason Voorhees style just like smushes his face and then rips his jaw off is one of the most violent kills I've seen on screen in a long time. And the fact it came from a fucking show I was watching on Disney Plus, I was like, oh, damn, okay, Kevin Feige, I guess you aren't. I guess you aren't a little pussy. I guess you can do it. So yeah, the Daredevil was way better than I thought it was going to be under the hands of Disney. So I'm very excited to see where that goes next. But I think that's it for us here at the Gory Hole now. I'm gonna, let y'all go do your thing, so, you can stop listening to me rant about films. But, you've got homework. Watch something gory. If you need a camp slasher and you haven't seen Final Girls, go out there and watch Final Girls. It's fantastic and doesn't get the love that it deserves. But yeah, have a good rest of your week, y'all, and I'll be back for the next episode when I'm back. I'm not going to set any strict timelines, but I think for this next one, we're going to probably talk about Sinners, maybe talk about where we're at that point when I make that episode of The Last of Us, and talk about, how I think the season's going compared to, how part 2 of the video game was. But yeah, we'll see if I can fit any other films in there. Who knows? But yeah, enjoy your week. Watch something gory.